Laura Canzano and Bre Fern are two trending creatives in the ad industry right now. Both known for their outstanding creative work at GSD&M and Argonaut, along with other agency experiences, they are genuine friends. I reached out to them after becoming a huge fan of their Instagram account called BreakingAD. Their goal is to help beginning creative talent, or newbies as they call it, avoid the mistakes they made early in their careers. Alumni of Miami and UT Texas, they both attended Miami Ad School. Great schools. Shout out to Buchin, our creative director, who's also attending Miami Ad School as we speak. But in this episode, they break down their friendship, careers, and do what they do best: advise upcoming creative talent. So please check out BreakingAD on Instagram along with Entering Ad on Instagram. They have plenty of actionable advice with a unique visual experience. This is the Breaking and Entering podcast, and I am your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Bre and Laura from BreakingAD, welcome to the Breaking and Entering podcast. How's it going today?
Hey.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Well, thank you guys for coming on. It just makes sense that you guys are on this podcast. I remember discovering your Instagram page, BreakingAD. I was like, wow, the advice that you guys are posting, it's so similar to what we're doing. It just made sense. So I reached out and you guys said, it was a DM, and I've been doing this now with a lot of the guests is just a simple DM. I don't even do formal emails, and then people are pretty well receptive to it. So it's kind of an interesting tactic that not a lot of people maybe think about, but it worked with you guys. So thank you again.
What you just said right now is so key, especially because everyone's working from home. And something so simple as just like sliding into a DM and getting results. It's like, we didn't have to coordinate a meeting. We could just send DMs and have all of this orchestrated.
Yep, exactly. But it has to be quick. It's got to be effective. You can't drag it on. I guess there's an art to doing it, and you get experience if you do it often. So it just takes time for, just a quick message. As copywriters and creatives, I'm sure you guys know how to do that very well. So I want to get into this episode. I want to talk about yourselves. Obviously, you guys are a dynamic duo when it comes to the Instagram page, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into how you guys maybe met, if you guys worked together. And you guys are also doing some cool projects, right? So the Instagram account, BreakingAD, of course, but you're also involved in the Sideshow, which is an award show that we're going to definitely talk about, that students and really anybody can enter.
Anybody.
Yeah. Anybody
CEO,
can.
CDs, ADs, JDs.
Yep.
All the D's.
Yeah, so we'll dive into all of that. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and your roles and where you guys are working at.
Go ahead, Bre.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bre. I am currently a senior copywriter at Argonaut. I just started with them over the pandemic. It's been, most of it's been virtual. I'm working on Cricket Wireless, some new business stuff with them as well. I've only been at the company for a month, but just from the get-go, they've been very welcoming with, what I stand for, what I believe in. I get to work with my partner, who is also called Laura, but her name is Laura Marie. She's awesome. And, currently me and Laura are partaking in, BreakingAD. We have another side hustle called the Sideshow. And I, on my free time, like to dabble on LinkedIn and drop some Breisms, if you're familiar with the platform.
I love those.
I actually just got featured on LinkedIn News, and it was quite a shocker when I woke up to 500 messages. And I was like, what happened? And it's my post made the LinkedIn News cover, and I was like, oh my God, like I think it just hit a chord. I think it just hit a chord in the LinkedIn community because it was just talking about back-to-back meetings. But that's enough about me, because Laura Canzano is fucking amazing. That's why we're partners, and I want her to talk about herself as well.
So hey everyone, I'm Laura. I'm an ACD at GSD&M here in Austin, Texas. I've been with GSD&M for 6 years now. I got bombarded with emails as well a couple of days ago, and I had no idea it had been that long. So I don't have a very traditional trajectory in terms of like jumping around in different agencies. And part of that is because I'm from France, and so I'm on a visa, and so that kind of limits your options sometimes to move around. But I've also been very lucky at the agencies I've worked at. Currently, I work on Ross. I work on Universal Parks and Resorts. And then we have FCA, which is Fiat Chrysler Automobile. And so it's like Dodge and Ram and all this stuff. So I get pulled in for those kind of projects randomly whenever they need an art director or something. So yeah, and then Bre and I, I'll tell you how we met. We met, she was interviewing to be my partner. Except they forgot to tell her I used to do a lot of multicultural advertising in Spanish, and we were looking for a bilingual writer. And our agency had her interview thinking she would want to write in Spanish, but they never asked her if she wanted to or not. So they were like, well, you still want to interview her? And we're like, sure, we'll interview her. And then they ended up hiring her, just not with me, just with a different partner. And then we became friends. We became office gossip buddies.
That's right. That's what's up.
Nice. So did you ever end up working on the same type of projects when you were at the same company?
No, actually one project.
One
project. Yeah.
One project, and it was like awesome. It was really fun. Laura has like this amazing ability to just like juggle so many things. And at the time we were working on a campaign for Ross, but she was also doing Universal Studios, and they were just about to launch a campaign, and she was just like holding it down. She was just like, girl, I need to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, I'll help you, whatever you need me to do. And we just like knocked it out during this pitch for Ross for like the teen account. And you know, it was just really fun working with Laura. And I at that point in time, I'm like, I want to do something with her in the future because I like her style.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you're in an agency like that, is there like wiggle room where you can say, hey, I want to work with Laura on this project? We're a dynamic duo. We can figure this out.
I think you can always, especially if you're early in your career and you're still trying out partners. I think like partnerships are hard, right? And we actually did a post about that. And
right.
A lot of people, you know, especially when you're younger, you get antsy and you kind of just like don't try to work it out. But I had a CD when I was a student who told me partnership in advertising is like a marriage. It's really hard to find. When you find that person, you want to stick with them, but also you got to stick it out for a little bit and see how it pans out, right? So I think depending on the agency you're at, you can always say like, hey, I really like working with this person, or I want to work with this person. Can you put us on one project together to see how it works? And a lot of times, if at least at GSD&M, you can do that, and they'll find a project for you guys to work on, like whether it's like a new pitch. But I think you always have to let your current partner know as well, so they're not like left out high and dry and they don't understand why. So it's like there's a finesse to it. You can do it, but there's a finesse to it. You don't want to, because you don't want to burn bridges with anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes
sense.
When
I got to GSD&M, I noticed there were like a lot of partnerships that were just like, you know, they've been partners for some time. But where I come from, when I came from New York to Austin, and I was like used to the frame, just where you can float around and be partners with different people until you found the right fit. And I was just like, is it like that down here? Is it not? I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Because, you know, you just have to peep game when you're in an agency, like what you can ask, what you can't ask. You don't want to like step on toes, right? And always communicate with your partner, like what the deal is. So I personally, you know, my partner and I at GSD&M had a talk, and we're like, hey, do you like want to float around and dabble with other partners? She's like, sure, like let's do it. And unfortunately my time got cut short due to the pandemic, but we were on board and we were like communicative about it. And so I think that's always key, right? To just have open communication with the person you're working with 40 plus hours a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of time together. So you mentioned, Bre, that you did a transition from New York to Austin, right?
Yes, sir.
How was that transition?
OMFG. Okay, so anybody that knows me knows that I have no filter. I'm like a walking lawsuit. I should kind of try to censor myself a little bit more. It's gotten me in trouble sometimes, but Austin's a very nice city. Everyone's very friendly, welcoming. Coming from New York, where you're constant, like you're on the sidewalk and you're walking and someone's like, get out of my way, bitch. And you're walking a little bit further and they're like, what are you doing taking up space, girl? And a homeless man just pisses on you. You just keep walking and just going about your day. And then you get to Austin and everyone like opens their doors and they're like, God bless your heart. How you doing, darling? Do you want some brisket? And I'm just like, girl, listen to me. Coming from New York to Austin, it was just like an acclimation for me because, again, like New York City, working in New York City in the ad scene there, it's just very direct. The way that people talk to you, just the way their demeanor is. Austin's like a very nice place. And I think I had to like lower my guard down a lot because I was so jaded from New York. And I've kind of like become such a nicer person as a result living here. And I really like it. I've made amazing friends. I met Laura here. I met great mentors here. But there was definitely a learning curve and how to transition out of like that New York mindset where not everyone's out to get you and throw you off the Empire State Building. Right. They actually want to paddleboard with you at Lady Bird Lake. So definitely a transition.
What was that agency you were at before GSD&M? If I said that
right. So I was at Saatchi Toyota. No comment on that. Okay. Before that, I was at FCB New York, and that's where I got my start. I love that agency. I had some great mentors there, amazing partner at the time. And yeah, I think I really learned a lot about the industry because I had like the right mentors in place to help guide me. But it is what it is. And you kind of try to play the ad game, switcheroo. You jump from agency to agency. It's kind of like the New York thing to do. You stick at a place for like 3 years or 4 or 2, and then you just go to the next shop. It's kind of like the unsaid, unwritten culture of New York City, which is another different thing about, a city like Austin, right? Like a regional city where people have been at GSD&M for like 35 years, 30 years, 20 years. It's definitely like something that I wasn't used to.
And Laura, you mentioned that you've been sticking with it for a while now. You haven't had that agency bounce around as much.
No, I got to the GSD&M, and at the time when they hired me, they offered me a position that was really interesting. They were starting the multicultural Hispanic arm, if you will, and we were going to be our own independent agency within the agency.
Oh, cool.
And so for me, that was really a great opportunity because I knew if they were going to grow that department, I could climb quickly and prove myself and then try to get people hired under me. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way. We ended up just being absorbed within the agency and just kind of working. Whenever there were multicultural projects, we would take them on, but like then just being like working on general market stuff too, which was to me was a great balance and a great way to transition and show that I can do more than just multicultural advertising. So I've just I kind of end up, and years just gone by so quickly, and I think like every year I got, because I kept growing, I got cooler and cooler projects. So it was like, I'm just going to stay. Like last year when we launched unfortunately COVID killed it, most of it, but we launched the Universal campaign. That was an incredible opportunity for me. And I was just happy to work on it. So, and Austin's such a great city. It's really hard to, justify moving to a place that's like twice as expensive, twice as crazy, if you're not going to have like a good job at a good agency, Mm-hmm. So I think that for me, also, I'm a little older than Bre, so you get to a point in your career that you consider all that too. Like, because when you start at a new agency, you're going to be pulling all those all-nighters and all that shit because you want to make a good impression.
Sure.
Right off the bat. So it gets to a point where you're like, do I really want to do this when I have cool brands that I'm working on right now, and I like my coworkers? And now it's not to say that if tomorrow someone shows up is like, hey, here's a great, you know, position at this amazing agency in LA, New York, or Chicago, or whatever, I would turn it down. But I wouldn't turn it down. But yeah, it's just, it kind of happened in a way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, Laura, if you want to describe your agency, and Bre, if you want to describe your agency, I just wanted, like, how would you characterize them in as brief as possible?
Mm-hmm.
I would characterize GSD&M as a local agency that has national reach, and that is people oriented. So they care about the people, but they do like big things.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Bre?
Yeah, so again, I've been at my agency for a month and most of it has been virtual, but just from the get-go,
Right.
I can say it's kind of like a small, scrappy shop with just like a big heart, and everyone's operating at the same wavelength. There's no egos. Everyone is not above their pay grade. Everyone's down to help you out. Everyone's kind of like speaking the same language. No one's trying to ruffle feathers. And it's just like the greatest talent I've been around in a long time, and it's very refreshing. And I'm kind of glad I found my fit, because I have been exposed to different size shops, from like really big shops where you're just like a statistic, right? Like you're a number. There's like 200 creatives, to shops where it's like a 20, person creative team. And now I'm at a smaller shop, and I really like it because I feel like your value is really utilized, and I haven't felt like that in a long time. So I'm just really glad to be there.
How many people at Argonaut? How many people at GSD&M?
I think Argo is like somewhere between 70 and 80.
Okay.
We're 200, like almost 300 at GSD&M. And the creative department is like 35, 40 people.
If
50, no, 80. Oh, I don't know.
If you were just leaving like college and you were looking for an agency, and Bre, you've experienced different agency sizes, and Laura, I'm sure you have too. What would be that sweet spot for, you're just graduating, you know yourself as you are now? What would you pick coming out of college? Like what's the perfect size agency for that entry level?
Small
shop.
How small we talking?
Go small, go home.
Like 60, like under 100 people, 150. I think.
Yeah.
You get more personalized attention in that space, and because there's less people, they have to give you a bit more responsibilities.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I think I started at a small agency too, and it was just very much like everyone becomes your mentor at this point.
I would even go smaller than that. I know agencies that are like 20-person agencies, 10-person agencies. I had a buddy of mine when I got out of ad school that was at a very, very small shop, but like they won ad agency, small agency of the year. They won DNADs. They won women shows. They won Lions. And this was like a 10-person shop.
Which one was that?
I'm sorry?
Which one is that?
So it was like, it's called Narrative. It's no longer there. Okay. But like one of my buddies had been in it for like a year and a half at the agency, and he won so many awards. And I was like, dude, you're set. Like you're a junior, like with all these awards, all this hardware. And I know people that have been in the ad game at a big shop or a mid-sized shop for like years. And it's just, when you have so many teams competing against ideas, it's hard, right? Because you don't touch as much of the work as you'd like to. But when you're in a small shop, you wear so many hats. Like you're not just a creative, you're a production, you're a producer, you're an account manager. You sometimes operate as a CCO because there's just not enough people to fill those roles. So he got like an amazing value tax to add it to his resume just for being there a year and a half. And then he went on to the big shops. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So let's rewind a little bit. Usually I start off with telling in a chronological order, but I just, we just got off track in a good way. So I want to hear like from back to college for both of you. Laura, you did your BS in advertising at UT Austin Longhorns. Am I correct?
Yeah, how come?
Yep. which is one of like a top 5 undergraduate advertising program, I would say.
Yeah.
I read about it all the time. And Bre, you were at the University of Miami.
Cane City, baby.
Another great ad school that I see all the time in the news and all that. So did you guys go to these schools, these great advertising schools, knowing they were good at advertising? You knew you wanted to do this, or it just so happened you stumbled upon it because it was a good advertising school?
I actually went to UM and I had no idea what advertising was at the time. I'm gonna tell you a really funny like anecdote. I went to University of Miami for law.
Really?
Even though my trajectory was in the communications path, I ultimately wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, and I went to like law school at George Washington after University of Miami. But at the time, I remember vividly, I had a friend who was doing advertising at the school, and we were talking about whether or not to go to law school. And I was like, why would you get into advertising? Like, what's advertising? It's not going to pay the bills. Like, it's such a weird profession. Like, you should definitely be a lawyer. And I just look back to that conversation I had with her when I was 19, and I just like laughed my ass off so hard because she ended up being a lawyer and I ended up being in advertising. And it's like, you just never know where life is going to take you. And you know, it's crazy. But yeah, UM has a great advertising program. Not that I knew, because I was too busy trying to be a lawyer at the time. So hopefully other people did the program and it went well for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Laura, how about you? Did you know that UT was a great ad school and you chose it for that reason?
Yeah, actually. So I grew up in Panama, and I knew in high school I wanted to do advertising because I wanted to go to art school, but my parents were like, nah, you're not going to art school. You're not going to be an artist. We're not paying for you to go to art school. So find another profession. And so I started looking, you know, at different professions that were creative because I knew I wanted to, you know, I used to paint and photography and all that stuff in high school. So I wanted to keep that up. That was really what brought me joy. And my counselor was the one that suggested UT, and she's like, if you want to go to if you want to do advertising, here are the schools you should apply to. And one of them was UT. At the time, UT was top 3. And so I applied to all the different schools that she suggested. I got in. And then at the end of the day, we picked UT because it was like, in terms of, and this is gonna sound awful, but like in terms of price quality, in terms of how much it costs per year versus like what kind of education you're getting because of its ranking, UT came out on top because it's a public university. So for international students, it's cheaper, you know, than all the other private schools. So yeah, I picked UT based on price, really, and it was the best decision I made because Austin is an awesome town, especially for college students. At the time, it was a lot cheaper.
Right.
And but the whole time I was at UT, I was like waiting for that creative side of it. I was like, all right, when are we gonna make ads? You know, and when you do a bachelor's in advertising, it's a lot of, you know, you take media and all, like, it feels like you're training to be an account person or a media person. And then the creative sequence they have, which is really good, you have to kind of apply, and they have, I think they've improved the application process. When I was in college, it was just like one thing that you submitted, and it was super subjective, and so they would only accept like 10 people every semester.
For like a creative course?
Twice. Huh?
Was it like a specific creative course that you were applying for?
Yeah, they have something called the creative sequence, and it's like that's meant for like the creative side of advertising, where you build a portfolio. When you graduate, you have a portfolio and you have internships, and that's like their way of kind of doing their creative things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't get in twice. So then I went to Miami Ad School which we both went to, just at different times.
Yeah. I was gonna get to that next. Well, I wanted to comment. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the undergraduate kind of prepared you for media or account. I make the argument that, well, they have to cover all their grounds, right? You have to know, you have to be well-rounded. And I did notice because I just graduated this May, and I noticed in my at my time at University of Illinois, they tend to lean towards shaping you into a well-rounded advertiser, which is focused with strategy.
Right.
Which is, I think that's the right way to do it. I mean, if you know you're creative, they have creative courses, and those people are special and they know that, and they do that route. But for the account side or the non-creatives, you're a strategist, which is fine. But I think it's interesting to note.
Yeah, I thought, like, when I applied for the program, I naively thought that I was going to make ads for 4 years, and that wasn't the case. But I actually really I don't regret going this route, because I feel like I was more well-rounded than some people who went to like art school, then did like a Miami ad school or portfolio school, and then got into the business because they just didn't have, I don't know, knowledge about, because I also did like a what do you call it? They have like a business school foundation. Like I did a minor in business school too. So it's like, I think it's important for creatives to understand the business side.
Yeah, 100%.
Just of the world, and understanding marketing and what's included in all of marketing and all of that.
I know what I was going to ask. There are advertising majors, and I've had people on this show talk about it's important.
Right.
You can also, like, what's your opinion on people that come in from psychology? What's your opinion on people that major in graphic design or these not graphic design, but more of these off majors that they tend to find their way into advertising later in life? They might have a whole different career path. Is that something you recommend? Like, if you want to be in advertising, study something off like sociology?
I would say, it's funny. What department into the ad game are you referring to them having this background? Are you saying if they're creatives, what majors they should study?
Well, let's talk about creatives, because a lot of times, like, people want to study advertising. It's a straight shot. They know their route they want to go. But sometimes I hear that's also not the best way to do it. Sometimes you have to stumble your way in. So what's your opinion on that for creatives? That's
funny. So, okay, for me, at the core of advertising is human insight and human behavior. And if there's one major that taps into that, it's economics. And it's funny because I am definitely left brain, but at one point in my life, I was right brain and going into the legal field. But I did economics for a little bit, and it really teaches you like consumer behavior, why people are doing the things they're doing. And it trains your brain, and it trains your thinking patterns into why is this insight happening, and how can we come up with a creative solution to jump into it? Because some advertising courses, from the sounds of it, or from when I talk to students who are in advertising, and maybe Laura can echo more on that, it's very theoretical. And what we do is very practical. So I do believe that economics or psychology, even at that front, because a lot of what we do is psychology at its core as well, helps you just like really train your mind to look for that human insight, human behavior, to come up with just amazing ideas and amazing creative.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard that before.
Too. Sorry?
I was just saying, I've never heard anybody talk about econ, and I had to take 2 econ classes that I was like, why am I taking this? And I didn't do very well in it. So maybe I should have paid more attention.
Yeah. Econ was really hard for me too. Don't worry.
It tells you, it teaches you how to sell. I mean, it depends what type of creative you are. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, there's some creatives that go into the industry and they're like, I want to be a creative director. And there's some creatives that go into the industry and they're like, I just want to make good creative. Right. But when you tell yourself, I want to be this creative director, you kind of have to understand the business, because you're just on this trajectory to be a CCO, and you have to understand business and creative, because you're going to be managing a company. And if you know how to sell to clients in a form that they speak as well, you're just that much more better prepared, on top of the fact that you know how to do creative. So it's just it's a means of like mastering both sides of your brain and knowing how to speak the language on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's why I always say I'm glad I did a bachelor's in advertising, because it covers a lot of that. And I did a minor in business because it covers a lot of that stuff.
Nice.
And you feel more prepared when clients talk about, benchmarks and all this stuff in their meeting. You know what they're talking about, and you can respond to it and be more intelligent, be more intelligent about it. And I don't know that you have to take a major for it. That's stuff you can also learn on your own.
Yeah.
Definitely psychology too. I think psychology is a huge part of what we do. And I used to love, I just took like electives psychology classes just for fun because I like psychology.
Yeah, definitely. Laura, do you see a lot of people in your creative department that are strictly, I don't know how well you know the people, but like, did they just study advertising or graphic design?
No, I've met people like Bre who was like lawyers. I've met people who studied, journalism and became an advertising copywriter. I know people who like stuff that had nothing to do, like engineering, like just you meet all sorts of random people that just end up in advertising for some reason, which I think is cool because all that stuff you can use. And that's the good thing because advertising, you're supposed to understand the people, the consumer that you're trying to sell the product to. Mm-hmm. And if you have an engineering background and you work on like a car brand or like something that a brand that's related to that, you're going to be that much stronger in understanding why certain people care about certain things. So I think, I've met a lot of people and then there's obviously a lot of people who did advertising.
I remember, and we're not in the pharma space, but I remember applying to jobs as a junior in pharma because, you're just trying to like break into the industry however you can. And I interviewed at this company and they're like, oh, do you have a biology background? Because most of our writers have a biology background. I'm like, that's the first time I've ever heard that being said. So when I talk to most of the writers on staff, they're like, yeah, we study biology and chemistry and now we're here. I'm like, okay, what happened to medical school? They're like, yeah, it didn't work out, so we went to advertising. Gotcha. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Well, so if you're thinking about pharma,
get that biology background. And I mean, that's definitely specific for pharma. That's a whole different ball game. But let's talk about ad school, because that's a commonality. You both went to Miami ad school, which shout out to our graphic designer, Buchin, who's there right now via Zoom basically, but he's enrolled right now. He just finished up his first quarter.
Shit.
Yeah, he's a baller. So he's awesome. He does all of our designs on the Instagram and cover photos.
That's awesome.
But so talk to me. So as creatives, do you have to go to portfolio school? Is that like a requirement? I have friends right now that are kind of struggling, where there's this balancing act where there's not a lot of jobs open right now, especially a couple months ago. And they're like, okay, well, I don't want to pay for portfolio school, but I don't have a job yet. And I think this is the next thing I need to do. So what was it in your heads when you guys were graduating? And then what would you recommend students now?
Yeah, I think Miami Ad School would kill me for saying this, but I think Miami Ad School is a big LinkedIn network. You have access to the best of the best in the industry, whereas if you did it yourself, again, you don't have to go to a portfolio school. You don't have to major in X to be in advertising. You can literally do it all yourself. It might cost you, it might be a little bit longer to finish in and jump into the career you need because you don't have the right mentors to guide you there. But at the same time, you don't have a student loan payment of $40,000 or $60,000 for going to portfolio school. So you have to weigh what you want, right? It's a 2-year program. It's, in my opinion, really valuable because you get to intern all over the world. You meet people from all over the world, and these are people that are going to help you in your career. So most of the people that I know in Miami Ad School that I went to Miami Ad School with not only opened doors for me, but like hooked me up with jobs. I'm like, oh man, I'm looking for a job. And then like, because all my friends are spread across the US, like they just have eyes on the ground and put an ear to the ground as well for jobs that open up. So it's definitely just like a big freaking network. But again, if you're not going to spend $40,000 on it, I don't blame you. There's so many tools online that prepare you to enter the industry that you don't have to go to portfolio school for. I know plenty of creatives that haven't gone to portfolio school and are equally at top agencies and at top shops making amazing work.
Yeah. I think I will say, add to that, I agree with Bre. If you're not going to go to portfolio school, you better have amazing willpower and just self-discipline. Because
Right.
I remember when I was deciding to go, a friend of mine was like, you don't need to go to Miami Ad School. Well, you know, you've been, because I had been interning at an agency almost a year at that point. He's like, you already know what we do here and how we do it. Just come up with brands. This is what you're going to do for the next 2 years. Just come up with brands, come up with projects, build a portfolio. And as like easy as that sounds, I think what, you know, a portfolio program does is not only does it teach us the tools you need to learn, but it also, you have people to like review your work. They give you the projects and they're there to like, just like you have an actual creative director that's gonna help. And then you have the benefit of these schools make you enter student competitions.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I didn't know about before I got into Miami Ad School, for example, and student competitions can really give you a leg up when you're looking for a job because you won awards and you're starting your career with already, you know, some kind of a reputation that's proven outside of just you. So I felt like it was important for me to go to Miami Ad School to build a solid portfolio. And the fact that it was that school specifically at the time, I was looking to go back to Europe, and that was kind of like the school that they were growing in Europe, and it was you know, it's an easier way to find internships in the end of the day.
I mean, I just can't imagine the process now that aspiring creatives are going through with finding jobs, going through like just the whole process is so foreign to me because I'm not in that route. I know how to do the account, basically everything besides creative on the other side of it. But I commend and applaud everybody that has the focus and the talent and the willpower to pursue that creative side. And you two are so successful in it. So I'm just impressed by the both of you and appreciate you guys sharing your insights. So if you went back and you no regrets, right? You guys are happy that what you did, and you got your jobs because of that, because of the ad school. Would you say that's true?
Yes and no.
Yes.
Yes
For
and
me.
no.
I ended up getting my first job at the agency. I had been interning for a year, ironically, before I went to Miami Ad School. But I think Miami Ad School prepared me for you know, just always pushing for a better idea and just again that like getting to know people who are now, you know, prominent people, because now I'm like almost 15 years in my career, and you know, everyone's climbing at different rates, and so now you see people who are owning their own ad agency and stuff like that. So it's I don't know. Yeah, yes and no.
Well, what was it like then? I want to get into how you broke into that first job. And you said you interned, Laura. Bre, I want to just hear about like that first, when you got in that first role at your first big agency or small. What was that like? How did you get there? Touch upon that for me, if you please. Bre, let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a big networker. I believe in the power of like connection, and it just for me it's innate. It's just my personality. And so I remember when I started Miami Ad School, and this is a very, very wise aphorism one of the founders at the time said. He goes, there's 4 people that come to Miami Ad School. There's one person that has an agency in mind, and all their book pieces are geared toward that one agency, and they, you know, at the end up working there because they literally came into this program for that one agency. There is a student who just wants to win a bunch of awards because then when they graduate, they have all these doors that are open for them because they're such a hot commodity. They've won, you know, Future Lions, DNAD, One Show. They've won all these things. And then there's a networker. There's a student that is literally, okay, who can I meet? Who can I connect with? Who can I be introduced to? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And then the 4th student's like, well, all my other career options failed. I don't know why I'm in Miami Ad School. Let's just give advertising a shot. Let's just wander this path. And I think when I figured out exactly what person I was in the school or in Miami Ad School, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do to just like break into the game. Also, keeping into perspective that I came from another career that didn't pan out. So that being said, when I started Miami Ad School, I made it my objective. Every time we had the Industry Heroes, which is a Monday panel where industry leaders come and speak to you, or when we had certain classes with certain professionals, I made it my objective to just stay in touch with them, follow up with them, see how they were doing. When I did internships, I became friends with the recruiters, friends with the creative directors, friends with the ECDs. Like, everyone remembered me. And I remember having a class at ACD New York, and I became so close to the recruiter there when I took a class with my Miami Ad School teacher. And when I was looking for a job, when I graduated, I'm like, oh my God, that class I had a year ago in FCB New York where I met the recruiter, I'm going to follow up with her. Hopefully she remembers me. And you know what? She did remember me. She's like, I know exactly who you were. I was locked outside the building and you opened the door for me when you were inside as a student. She's like, how can I forget? She's like, you know what? We're actually looking for a junior copywriter position. I'm going to have you meet the team. And I was like, oh, fuck yeah. You know, I just left an impression with her and she brought me back on to interview at FCB New York. So that was awesome. And I ended up getting the job. And you know what? She's a lifelong friend. I call her all the time when I need career advice. I'm friends with her. We check in on each other. Her name is Fifi Jacobs. She's like the fairy godmother of the advertising industry. She's been in the advertising industry for like 40 plus years. She's like a big name. And the fact that, you know, she's just one of my mentors, that I know her, that she's the one that opened the door for me, is just monumental.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. The networker then. I like
that.
You knew what you had to do. You found out who you were.
Yeah.
And you pursued that path. And I think that's smart.
Yeah. When you know your strength early on, it's easy for you to capitalize on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not everyone's like Bre. I was more like the clueless student. I knew I wanted to do advertising. I had no idea how to get there. My first job as internship was a month-long internship in an agency in Panama, and I got stuck with the account person because I didn't even know. Again, like at UT, I didn't even know. I didn't understand how it all worked at that time. So I got this internship and I was working with the account person. And then one day she's like, oh, let me give you a tour. Like, let me show you the rest of the departments. And she showed me the design studio. And she's like, here's the design studio. And I was like, oh, can I sit with them one day just to see? And she's like, sure. So I sat with them and they were super cool and nice. And they started teaching me Photoshop and all this stuff. And I was like, this is more my jam. So I ended up staying there the rest of my internship, and it was it was definitely the most fun room to be in at the agency, and it was what I wanted to do, which was create and not just like do spreadsheets all day.
Right.
And then the agency where I ended up interning for a year is called Latin Works. It's now called Third Ear. At the time, it was a up-and-coming Hispanic ad agency, and by the time I left it, it was like on the A-list of small shops and top Hispanic agency from Ad Age and all this other stuff, and had won a ton of can lines. And I got into that one because I needed an internship for credit, and so I applied to all the local agencies in Austin, and Latin Works was one of them. And they reached out to me because I had put in my resume that I had done both account leadership and creative because of my previous internship. Anyway, long story short, I interviewed with the CCO at the time, Sergio Alcocer, and we had a very common thing. We had a thing in common. My dad worked his entire career at Nestle. And because of it, we moved around a lot. And so he asked me like, oh, that's another good advice. Like on your resume, if you're someone that's like traveled a lot or lived in different places, or there's something unique about you, you can put it in your resume, because that's a good icebreaker and conversation piece when you're interviewing. So I had put where I lived, and he asked me like, where'd you live in all these places? And I said, well, my dad's job moved us around. He worked for Nestle. And he's like, no way. My father-in-law worked for Nestle his entire life. And while talking about it, we were just joking about how people who work for Nestle are like, they don't touch any other brand. And, it's like all this stuff. So we bonded over that. And he kind of gave me the internship on the spot. So it was just, again, like Bree's saying, like, I guess it was networking without knowing it, but it's finding that thing that you can like connect with someone and use that to your advantage.
Right.
And then, yeah, from there, I was like basically in the creative department for like a year with them, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice. And you never know what's gonna connect with a recruiter or who you're gonna talk to that's gonna recommend you, or who's watching, or who's looking at your portfolio. It's a, I think advertising, breaking in is a combination of skill.
There's luck too.
Oh yeah, I was gonna get that skill, talent, I guess, like, and then like being at the right place at the right time, and that experience that you have, and you just never know what's gonna get you through. So it's absolutely hard to break in now, especially with the pandemic going on. So knowing what you know now, if you were in the shoes of an aspiring creative, what would you recommend?
Are you talking about breaking in during this specific period of time?
Yep.
What tools? So I feel like I kind of was in their shoes because I was also looking for a job, and I started freelancing after my job got affected because of the pandemic. And one thing that worked for me, and I think they might not teach you at ad school, is how to brand yourself. You're going to come into this industry and learn how to brand products and goods for your client, but your biggest brand is you. And agencies right now want to see what you're about, how you sound like, what's your personality, what are you up to, what side hustles you're doing. And again, like, you don't have to have a side hustle. It's not a must have. It's a nice to have because it lets agencies know, like, oh, this person has this side project in this avenue, and I kind of want to like know more about them because they're doing it. Like, there's people that have literally been hired because of their side projects. And I immediately took to LinkedIn after, I was let go, and I had been active on the network before, but during the pandemic, I was just like really narrating my journey, helping people inadvertently, not realizing I was, and just like really growing my brand. And jobs came to me, like people started reaching out to me, and I was like extremely surprised. I'm like, if I would have known this when I started the industry, I would have done this from the beginning, because I've now created this platform in my likeness under Breisms, and everyone's just always messaging me like, I love what you're writing. Like, can we connect? Can we collaborate? Can we do things together? And I'm like, oh my God. So if you create something that agencies want to, hear more about or are more likely to participate in, it's going to be easy for you to break in, especially right now when there's so much competition. There's so many people looking for jobs. There's so many juniors in the market right now that have lost their jobs, or interns trying to get into the game. You really need to do something that stands out for you and like helps brand yourself, because it's very competitive right now.
Is that specific to creatives, or can that be applied to all the different routes?
I think it could apply to all the different routes, right? Like, if you're a strategist and you gear your platform, and I'm just going to use LinkedIn as an example, for strategic pieces of advice or strategic insights within, our culture, that's amazing, because you're establishing how you're thinking on a platform that's open to everyone. And if you're an account manager, what's your angle on how to own this platform? If you're a producer, what's your angle on how to own this platform on Instagram, on LinkedIn? Like, how can you own this platform and show off your brand? I think it definitely expands beyond creatives.
Yeah, and it stretches across every platform, not just LinkedIn. It's got to be on your Instagram, your Twitter, whatever else may be. So that's good advice.
Yeah, no, I say LinkedIn because if you think about it, everyone's on LinkedIn right now.
Right.
Everyone lost their job, and everyone's looking for a job. And agencies that let go during the March, the March wave of layoffs are starting to rehire. And a lot of eyes are on that platform right now. So it's really smart to just be on that medium. But Twitter is equally as relevant. There's a lot of amazing copywriters on Twitter. Like, we all know Don Draper, right? Like, you say Don Draper, and people immediately know who he is because of the brand he's established on Twitter and on Instagram. So that's just like really important thing that no one tells you. When I never heard that advice when I was in ad school personally, but now that I'm in the real world, I wish someone would have told me a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, they did tell us build a brand, but I never really got what it meant. And I think that the older you get in your career, the more you know your strengths about like what you're good at, what's your style, the things you like to create, the way you like to think. And I think that comes with years and years of just like getting feedback on your work, and you'll see patterns. So I think when you're in ad school, I think it's really about your personality more than your work and the style of work that you bring. So it's kind of looking at like your background and what you came from and what's unique about you in that sense, because that's what when we're hiring juniors, we're looking for skill and talent, but we're also looking for someone that has something we've never seen before, or done something in their life they've never seen before, because we know that's going to bring diverse ideas because the background is different. So it's also finding ways to differentiate yourself in that way. It took me a while to understand that and understand the strength in that, So, for example, for me, what I would use at the time was the fact that I was French and that I lived in different countries, and that I have a passion for painting, and I used to be a ballerina. As a junior, I think you can use less like advertising focused things to sell yourself, unless you won a bunch of awards or something. So I think it's very daunting when someone tells you build your brand. It's like, okay, but what's my brand? It's very hard to do. For me, at least, it's very hard to be introspective and understand my own strengths and things. Some people are much better at it than others. So it's really what we mean is like what's unique about you in your whole life, not just your advertising life.
Right.
Gotcha.
I didn't even, that's funny. Laura brings that up because I didn't know my strength was my energy. And time again, when I was hired, and the reasons why they wanted to keep me on was because of the energy that I bring to the creative team and overall the company dynamic. And Laura's strength, without her even realizing, is just her global perspective, right? She's European. She grew up in a Hispanic country. She's lived in the Middle East, and now she lives in Texas. And all this global perspective, applying it to different brands across the work we do is so vital and key, because right now, diverse creative is more and more important.
Yeah. And once you realize your strengths, it's important to put them out there and let people know in a creative way. So it just takes time to figure that out. And whether it takes 5-10 years or you just kind of slowly get after it, it's important to show it. So I wanted to just touch upon, I know we're running low on time, but obviously the Instagram account and BreakingAD is what you guys collaborate on to give advice to newbies, as you guys call it. So all of that, I mean, that's a side project that you guys have. I mean, for more information, definitely, if students listening now, you should be following it. It's really anytime for like advice type of things that I'm asking now, you can find much more on that page. Any quick comments that you want to talk about that and why you guys started that?
Yeah, we started it because it started kind of as a joke. I was furloughed, and Bre had just been laid off, and we were thinking about juniors and the pandemic, and we were talking about like, oh man, we're just joking around about all the mistakes we made as juniors and laughing at ourselves, and then laughing at juniors in general, because you're so naive, you're so stars in your eyes, and you think you're a creative director already, and really you haven't figured out shit. And so we joked about it on a phone call. And then Bre called me a couple of days later, and she's like, oh my God, we need to write a book. I want you to illustrate it. And I was like, a book? How about we start with something less like intimidating, like an Instagram account. If only your friends follow it, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
Nice.
And my mom likes every Instagram post. So.
Well, Laura's mom is our #1 fan.
That's good. I mean, if your mom's not a fan of it, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. So
exactly.
That's a good start.
Yeah.
And then another thing you guys are working on is the sideshow.
Yes.
Quickly tell us about that. I mean, that is amazing. I will be applying for it myself with this podcast. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's
good. I'll let Bre explain it.
Cool.
Yeah. So the sideshow was founded by Sunita, and Josh. They're amazing creatives. They're over in the West Coast. I believe Sunita's right now in New York. And they reached out to Laura and myself to partake in this very, very diverse sideshow award platform. And there's 10 categories, from like visual arts to music to just social good. You can participate in a host of different categories. And me and Laura are specifically in charge of the student competition. So BreakingAD is hosting the student competition, and we were able to work with Federico Hari, who's going to be the judge for the students when they submit their work. And we're going to mentor the winner. They're going to be able to talk to Federico Hari. They're going to win an award certificate from the sideshow. So many good things are going to come as a result of just like partaking in the student competition. And we're just happy to be a part of this network with the sideshow. We've grown from literally like a 4-person, 2-person team with Sunita and Josh when they first founded it to now just like 13, 15 people. And the amount of submissions we've received, the amount of press we've received, the connections we've made, I think it's just beautiful to see it come to fruition, because it's truly a diverse team of creatives working together to create this award platform. And I don't think any other award platform that we have out there is just as representative of what's going on in the industry as we are. So we're so proud of being part of this right now.
Yeah, we made a point to pick the judges and ask people to become judges, with the intent to make it as inclusive and diverse as possible. And also, Josh and Sunita really wanted this to be transparent. So there's like a whole page on our website where we kind of go over our stats in diversity, our stats with like, how we're funding this and all of that, which I think is really, really cool. It's definitely not for profit, is really for the sake of the creative. Mm-hmm. And you, as a student, you can enter both. You can enter the student competition, and if you have a different side project you want to enter, you can enter them. And then there's going to be a creative week, which is going to be awesome with all sorts of different panels. And so, yeah, it's an exciting event. It's a lot more work on our plate, but it's so much work.
Yeah, that's what they don't tell you. It's like when you're working your 40-hour plus job, plus your side projects, you're looking at an 80-hour work week, which is, it's not easy, but you make it happen because it's like what you love to do. And just going to end with, we're going to have a BreakingAD panel, and it's going to be the top 5 truth bombs that we've seen have picked up in our feed, in our BreakingAD feed, that have really resonated with our audience and followers. And we're going to have amazing speakers on it, from Facebook to GSD&M, from Giant Spoon, and from Droga 5, to just talk about these 5 pieces of advice that have really resonated with our audience.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank you guys so much, Laura and Bre. Thank you so much, really, for giving back to students and recent grads and junior creatives all across the nation. I know what you guys are doing is helping people. I've seen it. People talk to me about it. So thank you on behalf of all students. And recent grads.
Thank you for having us. This was really fun. And, thank you for spreading the word. It's we hope to continue this account for a long time. And like we always say, if you have any, if any non-juniors are listening to this podcast, if you have any truth bombs or any advice, because we try to collect them as well. We ask around. A lot of it just comes from us, but sometimes someone's like, oh man, I remember when I was a junior, I did this. And then we create a post out of it. So we're always here to hear stories and to continue it and give it more strength.
For sure.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering podcast. This was Laura Canzano and Bre Fern. Celebrities now, I would even say, in the ad industry. They're doing great things. So go and give them a follow. Follow BreakingAD on Instagram for great advice. Now it's time to thank everybody that helped me make this show. Mikey Malarkey, audio technician. Can't do it without you. Buchan Zhang, our creative director, the man. Audrey Nussbaum, our wonderful co-host, Kyle Moore, our genius strategist, and I want to thank the student group at the University of Illinois Midnight Oil Student Agency. Thank you guys. See you next week.